Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Earth 2 podcast, the podcast where we explore the origins and development of the DC multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters throughout the Silver and Bronze Ages of comics. I'm Peter Watson.
And I'm David Steele. Hello again, welcome back. Now, we're slipping 7 years or so back in time this week, aren't we, Pete?
Yes, the next story we were going to deal with was going to be a Wonder Woman story, and in our research for that, we discovered an earlier Wonder Woman story in which she comes across a counterpart from another dimension, not technically a parallel world, but when we had a read at the story, we thought we have to cover this.
Yep, our researches and preparation are ongoing, and there have been a few stories that we've done as we've been going along that we didn't know about when we started.
Absolutely, yes.
We've had to reschedule and fit things in as we've gone along, seamlessly, I might add. But stuff like the Goliath Hercules, Green Lantern's wedding, the three supervillains from the past, the Hercules, Samson and Atlas one. Jonathan last we mentioned him before, we'll give him another grateful shout out for making us aware of those. We've managed so far to pretty much incorporate everything in as we found it and stick to the chronological running. But in this instance, we haven't.
There we are.
We make up the rules, there are no rules.
So, what issue are we going to talk about today?
Peter, I'm glad you asked me. We are dealing with a story from issue 100 of Wonder Woman, which was published on 26th of June 1958 with a cover date of August 1958. So, we did one Wonder Woman story very early on when we realised she was the first superhero to travel to another parallel place and meet another version of herself. Mm-hmm. And it looks like pretty much like she was the second as well.
Very true. Very true.
So, good on you, Diana. Amazing. Yeah.
Interestingly, it's the Earth 2 Wonder Woman who did the first crossover.
Aye.
And this is the Earth 1 Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
we'll
go
on to that.
We should clarify, it was the Golden Age Wonder Woman.
Yes.
But who became eventually the Earth 2. And I love that. But I love the fact that that's just such a myth buster, because we all think of Flash 1, 2, 3, and it's like, no, Diana did it years ago. Yeah. It's great. Everything you know is wrong, listeners. So, shall we talk about the cover?
Yes, let's. Now, the weird thing is, these days, if there's 100th issue or something, you're expecting some sort of big, splashy kind of heroic character pose with maybe 10 variants or so.
Yeah, do you remember around about 95 when stuff like Wonder Woman and Justice League and The Flash all hit issue 100 and they had those sort of very similar sort of covers?
Yeah, the black background,
the foil sort of, so they were all going on, but this just looks like a standard. There's a little flash in the top left hand corner in the front that says special underline 100th issue, but that's about it. I mean, this is still quite a remarkable cover because there are two Wonder Women.
Yes.
And there's a big sort of pantomime giant type fellow. Mm-hmm. It puts me in mind of Jack and the Beanstalk type figure.
Yes.
A giant who's basically forcing this tree down on top of the two Wonder Women, and the caption says, "Can the battling Amazon defy the threat of the Forest of Giants?"
So, the story's titled Wonder Woman, the Forest of Giants, a prize two-part story. And the caption reads,
Wonder Woman, beautiful as Aphrodite, wise as Athena, swifter than Mercury, and stronger than Hercules, has met the challenge of every conceivable opponent from every possible world. Now, for the first time, she encounters a mighty antagonist unique enough to defeat her. Her double in every respect, in the constantly surprising tale, The Challenge of Dimension X.
Part 1.
And this opening splash panel shows two Wonder Women, and there's a very similar looking chap to the guy on the cover. We have a sort of almost over the shoulder point of view shot from the giant as he's forcing a spear down. It looks like one of the Wonder Women's holding a cushion or something to try and catch it. One of them's on the ground, and one of the Wonder Women is trying to hold off the spear.
So, into the story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
At the All-Champion Stadium, Wonder Woman and her sweetheart, Colonel Steve Trevor, watch a strange contest.
And we see a shot of Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor in the crowd at this athletics event, and they're watching a sprinter. And Wonder Woman says, "So, he's the world's champion sprint runner." And Steve says,
"Yes, Angel, he has no competition. That's why he's competing against himself to set a new record."
And we see the runner breaking through the tape, and a chap who looks like Sterling Morris with a stopwatch. Slow fade.
As the next unique contest starts,
and we see Steve and Wonder Woman and some other people overlooking a swimming pool. And Steve says,
"And there's another champion who has no rivals except himself."
And over two panels we see someone diving into the water and then swimming very quickly, and he looks a bit like Roger Moore, wouldn't you say?
A ginger Roger Moore.
Yeah, a ginger Roger Moore. It's a shame he doesn't have any dialogue, frankly, because who knows what we could have done with that.
Not enough eyebrow action.
There's a bit going on. He's obviously concentrating because he's watching his breathing.
Fair enough.
Very good to have swum so quickly without wearing goggles. I'm impressed. So, Steve and Wonder Woman continue their conversation. Steve says,
"You're the world's greatest all-round athlete. What a sight it would be to see you competing against yourself, Angel."
Sorry, Steve. You know I only use whatever skills I have to battle crime and injustice, not to give exhibitions.
At that moment, the miniature SOS system in Wonder Woman's Amazon bracelet signals her.
We see a very small television screen with a very beautiful blonde lady on it, who's obviously is Wonder Woman's mum. And she says,
Queen Hippolyta calling Wonder Woman. Come to Paradise Island immediately, Diana.
I'll leave at once, Mother.
Steve accompanies Wonder Woman to her parked Amazon plane, where...
And we see Steve and Diana in close-up with the invisible plane visibly parked in the background. And Steve says,
Can I go with you, Angel?
I'd love you too, Steve, but no man may set foot on Paradise Island, home of the Amazons.
As the unique plane literally bolts into the air...
Steve waves Wonder Woman off, saying,
Someday I'll marry that angel, if I can only get her to stop in one spot long enough without her having to answer some SOS or another.
At indescribable speed, Wonder Woman flashes toward the secret island home of her sister Amazons.
And we see Wonder Woman's plane closing on Themyscira. Is it Themyscira yet in this
Not
continuity?
yet, no.
Oh!
Yeah, it's just Paradise Island.
We see Wonder Woman's plane zooming in towards the island with her great big whoosh sound effect, and she's thinking, I wonder what Mother wanted. The island's not under attack. Everything seems peaceful enough.
Sighting the Queen of the Amazons, the impatient Wonder Woman leaps from her robot plane.
Hola, Mother. Why have you summoned me away from my duties in man's world?
Evidently, you've been so occupied battling crime and injustice that you've forgotten that annually you have to compete against any challenger for that honour, daughter.
Slow dissolve to the next panel.
Shortly, the Amazon princess faces her challengers in the outdoor arena.
And we see in this panel quite a few Amazons in chariots being driven by horses. And Wonder Woman, almost inexplicably at this point, she's bringing a sack
Yes.
tied round her waist.
Like
and
a sack race.
Yeah. And the Queen is saying,
As is our custom, the champion defends her crown under a handicap. Start the race!
over the page, the caption says,
For a moment, the galloping horses leave Wonder Woman gasping in the dust.
Gasping in the Dust, was that not an unreleased B-side from Menswear, the Britpop band?
I don't know that one. I'll have to have a look.
Okay, fair enough.
Have a look. Anyway, so in this panel we see some of the chariots dashing off, and sure enough, Wonder Woman's caught in the cloud of dust that's been cast up, and she's thinking, I can't catch them by running. And then she starts in the next panel, bounding off after them in her sack, saying, Hera, help me leap after them.
Encased though she is, like a bolt of twisted lightning, the lithe Amazon whirls to the finish line.
And Wonder Woman, in her sack, leaps over the first chariot and bounds between the others until she gets into the lead. And a voice declares,
Wonder Woman wins!
to the top of page 5, and the caption says,
The next contest finds Wonder Woman at the bottom of the gigantic glass-enclosed Amazon pool, where...
we see that Wonder Woman is underwater. She's chained to an anchor. In the background, we can see some Amazons that are basically wearing like frogman gear, and they've all got little individual sort of mini submersibles.
Mm-hmm.
And in the foreground of the panel, we see the Queen again, and she says,
Regardless of the handicaps imposed upon her, any Amazon champion must not fail against her competitors. Start the contest!
and the caption for the next panel says,
Held by the massive anchor, the Amazon princess is enveloped in the froth of the departing underwater speedboats.
and in a close-up panel, we see Wonder Woman, and she's thinking, I cannot beat my competitors by swimming.
Whirling the huge anchor around her.
And this is a great panel. I really like this one. Wonder Woman is holding the chain that is attached her to the anchor. She's whirling it above her head underwater, and she's thinking, Neptune, help me find some other way.
Like a human shot put, Wonder Woman flashes through the water, passing the other speedsters in a blinding instant.
And with a giant swish sound effect, we see that Wonder Woman's momentum has flung the anchor, and she's beaten the others. She's past the finishing line, and a voice declares,
Wonder Woman wins again!
We move to the top of page 6, and the caption says,
After the races, Queen Hippolyta congratulates the champion.
and Wonder Woman and her mum basically standing on the steps outside what looks like a big temple, and the Queen has her hand on Wonder Woman's shoulder, and she's saying,
Once again, Princess Diana, you have earned the right to represent all the Amazons in battling crime and injustice in man's world.
and there's obviously a cheer from the combined Amazons.
Hola!
The next panel is a tight close-up of Wonder Woman and her mother, and her mum is saying,
Congratulations, daughter. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Mother.
Suddenly, on the Queen's bracelet receiver...
And we get another close-up of another little TV screen, and it has an Amazon scientist on it. And she is saying, Queen Hippolyta, Alpha reporting from the experimental lab. I have just finished building the X-Dimension machine.
I shall come to you at once, Alpha.
All right, so she's called Alpha. The next caption says,
hurrying to the Amazon experimental laboratory.
And this is a great panel. We can see some big scientific equipment in the background. There's a few Amazon lady scientists all wearing white coats. Wonder Woman and her mother have arrived. And Alpha the scientist is saying, "It hasn't been tested yet, O Queen, but I believe the X-Dimension machine will transport the user to a dimension beyond any yet known to us."
And Wonder Woman says,
"By Jupiter, there's only one way to find out. I shall test it."
The dauntless Amazon steps in front of the untested machine, and, amidst the strange humming, seems to merge with her surroundings.
Over a sequence of 3 panels, we see Wonder Woman standing and then sort of fading out among sort of star sparkles. Looks like she's standing in a sort of fancy gold-lined shower cubicle. Or we're getting way ahead of ourselves here and we won't say too much more, but it's very like what becomes a sort of habitual interdimensional bit of equipment that the Justice League and Justice Society end up using in the future that we allude to in our opening sequence, doesn't it?
absolutely.
So with this first sequence of panels, Wonder Woman sort of fades out and the stars sparkle. Then we move to the top of page 7 and the captions say,
Suddenly, amidst the shrill droning of the X-Dimension machine, Wonder Woman not only does not vanish into another dimension, but is joined by another Wonder Woman.
yeah, so it's actually across the first 6 panels at the top of page 7, and as our Wonder Woman has faded out, at the bottom of the previous page, at the top of page 7, she's suddenly back there, and it's almost like the sparkles have moved over, and another Wonder Woman has faded in.
You know, it's weird looking at it modernised, because these days that would be done on one page as a 9-panel grid if they wanted to do that, because this is 9 panels, pretty much in the standard 9-panel grid format, but it's over 2 pages.
Yeah, it's quite unusual to see that type of storytelling
Yeah.
being done. I mean, what they could have done, they could have had underneath the By Jupiter, there's only way to find out, I shall test it panel, they could have had a little advert for some Tootsie Rolls or something. Then we could have had a full page of the next one, and then the next little bit of dialogue could have gone over the next page. And interesting.
Oh, well.
Anyway, and suddenly at the bottom of page 7, we have 2 Wonder Women.
And our Wonder Woman, who's startled, says,
"Shades of Pluto, who are you? You look as much like me as my own image in a mirror." And her mum says,
"I couldn't tell you apart from my own daughter. Who are you?"
and the next panel is a close-up of the 2 Wonder Women. And one of them says, "I am a twin Wonder Woman, champion of Dimension X, from which your machine brought me. Now that I am here, I challenge Wonder Woman to a contest to determine who is the greater of us 2.
And our Wonder Woman says,
Thunderbolts of Jove! It would be like competing against myself." We turn to page 8.
But Wonder Woman is honor bound to answer any challenge, even from a duplicate of herself.
And in close-up, our Wonder Woman says, "Sands of Morpheus, I feel as if I'm in a dream."
and Dimension X Wonder Woman says,
"You won't for long, Amazon, as soon as I defeat you." Very interesting that this new arrival refers to it as Dimension X.
yes.
After Alpha the scientist called it the X-Dimension machine. So does that mean that they already knew about Dimension X? They were actively seeking? Do you think maybe the scientists already knew that they would find someone there?
Maybe it's a bit like the telepathic circuits of the TARDIS in Doctor Who, and then it translates languages. So
Possible.
So she would refer to her native dimension in a term that the new inhabitant, well, the inhabitants she's come across on this new Earth,
Would
to
understand.
her,
Would understand. This is interesting because obviously at this point we've done a few stories where people have met other versions of themselves and stuff. I really wish we'd known about this sooner and we could have done it at the time, because it's a nice little... The differences... This new Wonder Woman doesn't seem thrown at all.
No.
It's almost like she was fully expecting all this to happen. I almost wonder if maybe it's Princess Tara. I don't know. It could well be. Maybe, who can say? But sadly it's not, probably. Anyway, we continue along top of page 8. The caption says,
Because of the remarkable contestants involved, unique contests have to be improvised. Finally,
and we see Queen Hippolyta in conversation with an Amazon called, I'm guessing that's Riga. In the background of the panel, 2 Wonder Women are walking off. And Queen Hippolyta says to the Amazon who's with her,
"Who performs first, Riga?"
and Riga replies,
"I don't know, oh Queen. The competitors will decide between themselves the next time the geysers erupt."
moments of breathless suspense follow, and then, as the geyser hurtles into the air, one of the tense figures agilely leaps upon the foaming crest.
And that's what we see basically. One of the Wonder Women atop the geyser, and down on the ground we can see Hippolyta and Riga. And Hippolyta is saying,
"Which one is it, Diana or the champion from Dimension X?"
the final panel of page 8, the caption says,
With incredible balance, the daring contestant literally rides the pillar of water to dizzy heights.
and Hippolyta and her Amazon charmer stood there, and the Amazon says,
"Who is up there, Wonder Woman or her challenger?"
and the little caption says,
End of part 1.
so the top of page 9 now, Nice Chapter 2 heading and all that, and the caption says,
The unique contest in which the famous Amazon is competing against an unbeatable competitor, herself, continues in
Part 2, The Forest of Giants. In the first panel, the Wonder Woman who's on top of the geyser descends, the caption says,
as the lithe figure leaps gracefully from the returning geyser.
And the version of Wonder Woman coming off of the geyser is saying,
Your turn.
and the other Wonder Woman says,
Thank you. That was quite a feat.
Again, there is a breathless wait for the geyser to erupt again.
Buzz repetition there, Robert Kanigher. We see the water starting to bubble, and the second Wonder Woman to attack the geyser bounds towards it, saying, Here it comes! And in the foreground of the panel, we see the other Wonder Woman watching her, slightly pensive expression on her face.
And when it does...
It's obviously referring to the geyser.
Yeah, it would help if it said that, actually, really.
Mhm.
And the geyser has erupted. Wonder Woman, is very gracefully, it must be said, is balanced on one hand. She's on top of the geyser, and it looks brilliant. And the other Wonder Woman is obviously impressed as well. She's down on the ground, and she says, Incredible! And we move to the top of page 10.
But to the amazement of all, the slim figure successfully balances herself on the whirling column of water.
And Wonder Woman on the ground helpfully reiterates by saying, She's balancing herself on one hand. No question about it. She wins this contest.
And when identical figures stand before the Queen...
And the two Wonder Women are stood before Hippolyta, and Hippolyta says,
Which one of you is Wonder Woman? Which one of you balanced yourself on one hand?
and the Wonder Woman on the right says, She did, Mother. She beat me fairly.
The Amazons are stunned.
And we get a nice panel of some very beautiful ladies. And the beautiful lady Amazons are all just chatting, and one of them says,
No one has ever defeated Wonder Woman before. And the next one says,
The next contest will decide it. And the next one says,
If she doesn't win it, it's all over. And the last one says,
What will be the outcome?
Like two sides of the same coin, the Amazon and the champion from Dimension X face the next obstacle. A row of giant candles.
It's absolutely Land of the Giants territory
Yes.
now, viewers. And I'm stunned that basically we're at page 10 of the story and we haven't even reached the titular Forest of Giants, I
No,
must say. Anyway, so there's the big stretching into the distance row of giant candles, and the two Wonder Women are beholding it, and one of them says, Our task is to race over the wicks of these candles and snuff every single one of them out.
and the other Wonder Woman says,
I'm ready whenever you are. We move to the top of page 11. The caption says,
And once again, the tense audience is unable to detect the identity of the contestant who has leaped up and is now, with fantastic speed, streaking across the wicks of the giant candles.
and over a sequence of 3 panels as Wonder Woman races across the top of the candles, the Queen thinks,
Who is it? Diana or the other? Performing this amazing feat.
The next panel, the caption says,
And then...
and Wonder Woman alights onto the ground. She's snuffed out all the candles, and there's an Amazon waiting who says,
You did it, Wonder Woman. Snuffed out every single light. It must be you. Only you could have done this.
and then we get a close-up of Hippolyta, who's thinking,
Everyone thinks the first contestant must have been my daughter, but there's no way of really telling. There goes the other girl. What is she doing?
and we have another sequence of 3 panels at the bottom of page 11, and the caption says,
Before the gasping audience, the incredible acrobat rockets across the wicks of the giant candles on her hands.
and that's what we see, but the perspective is different from the panels at the top of the page. And top of the page, the Wonder Woman was running away from the camera, as it were, and in this instance at the bottom, we see her coming towards us, and it almost looks in the final panel like she's got, 5 hands, she's moving so quickly.
Yeah,
Lovely.
it's very cool. Extinguishing all the wicks as
Yep,
she goes.
we'll put
Exciting.
that on the socials. So we move to the top of page 12.
Once again, the identical Wonder Women stand before the flabbergasted Queen.
And the two Wonder Women stand in front of one of the candles, and Hippolyta marching up towards them, and she says,
Whichever one of you raced across those candles on your hands won. Who? Who was it?
The next panel shows the two Wonder Women, and one of them says, Your daughter, Queen. We're now even. Whoever wins the next contest will be the real champion Wonder Woman. But since I've raced against her twice in her dimension, I think it no more than fair that she meet me in the final contest, in my Dimension X.
Wonder Woman accepts the amazing challenge, and shortly she and her twin stand in front of the X-Dimension machine.
Yep, and we see both Wonder Women back in the fancy shower cubicle. The machine is starting to hum and brum, and the two Wonder Women are starting to fade out, the stars are sparkling, and Hippolyta is waving them off, saying,
Good luck to both of you. It looks very much like the Star Trek
It
transporter. from the
absolutely
original
does.
series.
It really does. Because there's even sort of circular indents at the top. It really does.
I wonder if that's inspired. Oh no, actually, this is predates it.
Yeah. Any Star Trek fans out there know if the Star Trek production team read DC Comics, please let us know. So the caption of the next panel says,
Amidst the strange droning of the machine, the identical figures melt into nothingness.
And Alpha the scientist says,
"They're gone, O Queen." And Hippolyta says,
I wonder what will be the outcome. What will happen to my daughter in Dimension X?
very pensive Hippolyta there. Slow dissolve, the caption of the next panel says.
Like a picture suddenly flashed on a giant screen, Wonder Woman views this strange yet familiar landscape in which she has arrived.
And we see the two Wonder Women. It's basically a sort of Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, Wizard of Oz type style background. There's some nice trees, there's a big castle with lots of turrets and flags and sorts of things. And our Wonder Woman says, Great Hera, this looks like a scene out of a fairy tale.
And the other Wonder Woman says,
Naturally, Wonder Woman, that's what Dimension X is. And there's my castle, where we'll hold our last and deciding contest. That's what Dimension X is. It's a fairy tale. Interesting. We move to the top of page 13. The caption says,
Suddenly, a massive shadow falls upon the startled duo, and
this next panel is basically filled with a giant foot. That's obviously what's cast the shadow. And one of the Wonder Women is rushing off. The other Wonder Woman raises her hands, almost as if to protect herself, and she says, Shades of Pluto.
and the other Wonder Woman that's running away seems to have got caught in the foot of some trees and says,
The giants of the forest have come out again. It took us years to drive them back. Oh, my foot's caught.
with lightning reaction, the Amazon snatches her companion out of the way, just as, with a thunderous tread,
The giant's foot makes a giant thud as it connects with the ground, but Wonder Woman has grabbed the other Wonder Woman and managed to get her out of the way just in time. And the rescued Wonder Woman says, You saved my life, Wonder Woman. Let's run to my castle so we can get help. And also in the background of this panel, we can see some more of the giants. One of them has Viking helmet sort of look to him, and there's another guy in the background who's more of a sort of Greco-Roman sort of outfit. So
very much a mixture of, I was going to say mythologies, but that's not quite right.
well, an ethnic mix, shall we say? I mean, they're not all dressed identically, put it that way. So we move to the bottom of page 13. The caption says,
But as the two athletes race towards the castle, a forest of trees spring up amongst them as...
This is a great panel, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's from a very high perspective, even up above the giants from behind them. We can see in the distance the two Wonder Women running off, and it looks like the giants are basically uprooting trees and throwing them after them. And indeed, one of the Wonder Women says, The giants are trying to throw a barricade of trees around us.
It's almost like the giants are using the giant tree trunks as darts and using the ground as
Yeah.
as a giant dartboard.
I mean, or maybe they're just generally trying to hit them with the trees and just kill them. I don't know.
be.
I mean, because that's also what's happening in the cover, isn't it? One of the giants is over them with the trees, so we've probably reached that point in the story. We see some of the trees making contact with some more thud sound effects, and we're over onto the top of page 14, and the caption says,
Suddenly, amidst the newly sprung forest of trees, Wonder Woman finds...
And in a lovely close-up of Diana's face, Wonder Woman is saying,
Suffering Sappho, my double, is gone.
Unhesitatingly, the dauntless Amazon retraces her steps.
See Wonder Woman moving back through the trees, and she's saying, I ran so fast, I must have lost her, back there.
Into the clearing, Wonder Woman bursts with blinding speed.
Wonder Woman is rushing forward. She has a lasso out. She can see some of the giants in the distance. One of them, significantly, has his comedy Viking-style helmet on the ground. Perhaps he's caught something. And Wonder Woman is saying, The giants are waiting. Certain I'll come back to look for my companion.
Instantly, the Amazon princess whips her unbreakable lasso through the air like a bolt of golden lightning.
They're right, but what they don't know is that I have guessed where she is.
Wonder Woman's intuition is correct, for as she snatches the giant's hat from under his fumbling hands...
The lasso lifts up the Viking-style helmet, and we can see the other Wonder Woman is inside. She's sort of wedged against the edges, and she says, Amazon, you've saved me again.
and our Wonder Woman says,
We still have a fight to win. We move to the top of page 15.
No sooner are the two Wonder Women together again...
Yeah, and this is basically the cover image, more or less, isn't it? It's that very Mongolian sort of
Yes.
looking giant. And he's lifting a tree trunk and he's trying to force it down to pin the two women to the ground. And indeed, one of them says, Another giant, pinning us to the ground.
Leaping up, the defiant Amazon hurls herself against the tree held by the startled giant.
And she's basically tipped the momentum back against him, basically, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Knocked the giant onto his back. There's a giant thud. And the other Wonder Woman says, You've saved me for the third time, Wonder Woman. I am indebted to you forever.
The next instant, the ground shakes under a thunderous tread as...
And we have a close-up picture of both the Wonder Woman's faces, and in the background we have a startled look on the Wonder Woman of Dimension X as she says...
They're rushing us all together. They're like a forest of trees on the move.
And we have a smiling face on our Wonder Woman, and she says...
Trees. That gives me an idea.
With a surge of power, Wonder Woman bends the tree into a certain shape.
And the Wonder Woman of Dimension X says...
What are you doing, Amazon?
And our Wonder Woman says...
Shaping the tree into a boomerang. And sure enough, she is bending the tree basically almost like a 90-degree angle in the middle. So we move on to the top of page 16.
Like a gigantic catapult, Wonder Woman hurls the tree-sized boomerang into the advancing giants.
This is another great panel. The giant vroosh sound effect. We see the tree trunk flying through the air, taking each of the giants out in turn. And the Dimension X Wonder Woman says, "They're falling like 10 pins. You've saved us all from the menace of the giants. We'll celebrate."
As the boomerang returns to its powerful hurler...
And that's exactly what we see. The boomerang coming right back at the Wonder Woman. And our Wonder Woman has got her hand up, stopping the boomerang from hitting them. And Dimension X Wonder Woman is hitting the ground. And Dimension X Wonder Woman says...
And as for that third contest...
And our Wonder Woman responds...
Look out, or there won't be a third contest, as she stymies the progress of the boomerang. Right, a slow dissolve.
Shortly, in the experimental lab on Paradise Island...
And it's Queen Hippolyta and Alpha the scientist. And the Queen is saying,
I can't stand the suspense, Alpha. What has happened to my daughter? Who won? And Alpha, who's busy at some controls, says...
I have just managed to tune in Dimension X, O Queen. You can see for yourself. I've got to say, I love Alpha's little glasses. Very Far Side cartoon, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the closing panel of the story, and it's a close-up of the Queen and a close-up of Alpha, and they're looking at a screen. And on the screen we can see Wonder Woman, our Wonder Woman, on a throne, and she's being crowned by the other Wonder Woman, and there's a whole bunch of, I guess, what they must be the Dimension X equivalents of the Amazons,
Yeah,
all sort of
looks
stood
like it,
around. And as the Dimension X Wonder Woman places the crown on top of our Wonder Woman, she says, "To the only Wonder Woman, no matter in what dimension, Princess Diana of Paradise Island." The end.
A short, snappy story there. But, bearing in mind, folks, this story takes place earlier on in the chronology, but we did feel it was worth covering for several reasons. It is Wonder Woman meeting Wonder Woman again, which makes me think, I think Wonder Woman is the person we've seen most counterparts of apart from Superman at the moment, because we've got Earth 2 and Earth 1 Wonder Woman, we've had Tara Taruna, and we've had Dimension X Wonder Woman, and if you want to count Crime Syndicate, we would Superwoman.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Superman's probably had the most because we've had all his duplicates that we've come across in various stories, plus Ultraman as well, and also we've got the two Superboy other dimension counterparts that we've seen. Batman's probably next in the list. I've not done a quick tally, but so it's really kind of interesting. You know that's two stories really early on.
Yeah,
and both Wonder Woman before Flash of Two Worlds.
Again, it comes back to that thing we've said many times. Everyone thinks about it all kicking off with Flash or Two Worlds, and it doesn't. It's a very interesting story because it raises a lot of questions that don't get answered. Like, there's one tiny reference to Dimension X being a fairy tale. We don't get anything about the motivation of the giants, really. Apart from that they scared them off, but we don't really get told who they are. We don't really know who these other women are who are on the screen. We don't know the circumstances that led the Wonder Woman of Dimension X to become Wonder Woman, which is basically the same outfit, just the name, the whole identity that we're completely used to. There's no, at least when Jay Garrick was reintroduced with that whole thing about Barry knew who Jay was because he read the comics, there's no explanation at all for who this other Wonder Woman is. We know that she's from Dimension X, and that's it.
We don't know about any other duplicates on Dimension X. We can assume that the women surrounding them were the Amazons of Dimension X.
Oh, probably, yeah.
But they seem to live in a castle, more like a medieval kind of European look, as opposed to
they might not even
look.
They might not even be the Amazons. That's the thing. It could be some other whole sort of situation. Obviously they're fighting women because they got rid of the...
Yeah.
We don't even know if they call themselves that or if there's something else entirely.
We don't even know if they're all women because it's the backs of their heads you see in this black and white crowd scene. It looked mostly as if they were women, but they might not be. I'm
slightly frustrated at the lack of Dimension X clarification. It's 1958, so it's obviously a very throwaway story, even the standards that we're sort of used to. And it's obviously just a gimmick. Dimension X is something that will pop up again.
Yeah, but it's never the same dimension twice. It's just more of a catch-all phrase they use for an exciting sci-fi other dimension.
Yeah.
And we definitely will cover at least a couple more stories that refer to a Dimension X.
I don't think we can count it as another parallel Earth, because we obviously did that little recap tally last time, because this fairy tale dimension qualification that Dimension X Wonder Woman gives, could it be something to do with the dreaming, you know?
Oh, interesting.
You know, is she the Wonder Woman of the dreaming? Is it, which obviously is something that we'll come back to with way down the line, in a couple of hundred issues worth of Wonder Woman to an extent. I've said this before, I've made reference to the story in Flash issue 176 now. I felt that anticipated some of the later developments for the character, and a wise man could have retconned that and written a nice little Flash and Dream stroke Morpheus crossover. You know, I was always very disappointed that never happened, but you know, when we write our DC Universe comic pizza, that's
you're always referring to.
That's one of the things that we can do. There are so many questions raised with this story, and the interpretation is, you know, you can do what you like with it really, but it's the key thing is, as you've already said, is it's another Wonder Woman. It's Wonder Woman meeting another Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
In advance of everything else that we've done, really.
Interesting enough, on the cover, the couple of issues before this, you had Wonder Woman fighting another Wonder Woman again in issue 98, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that story, it's just another Amazon wearing a mask.
Yes.
But it's interesting that around about this time, this is a recurring image of a couple of
Two
Wonder Women.
Women,
Yeah. Must have been something in the water.
One of the things that wasn't explicitly called out in the story was the fact that Wonder Woman could breathe under the water. And that was, I don't know when it was introduced, but I remember reading somewhere that her earrings could generate oxygen.
Oh, really?
Which is how she could do things like breathe underwater and maybe breathe temporarily in space, I think. If I recall correctly, it's been a long time since I read those stories. And also, we've got the introduction of a Dick Tracy style video call screen on her bracelets. What? I was never aware that was a thing. Were you?
Yeah, no, I don't remember seeing that at any point in Wonder Woman ever. I mean, I haven't read a lot of 50s and 60s Wonder Woman, it must be said. Most of the Wonder Woman stuff I've read comes later, but I don't remember seeing that at any point. Yeah. It's a nice little useful narrative device.
There will be more Wonder Woman stories coming up very soon in the podcast.
Yes, very soon indeed.
And we're doing our best to do the deep dive on some of these stories, but they verge between some really nice classic niche stories to some absolutely atrocious stories. It really is very, very, very variable. But it's a really fascinating read through because they're pretty much all written by Robert Kanigher, who was on Wonder Woman for a very long time. We'll go into this further on in the podcast.
Yeah, we'll come back to it, but I always think of Kanigher as for his war stories.
And of course, he wrote the first Barry Allen as well.
And it's fascinating to think that he spent so much time on Wonder Woman. Indeed. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be Wonder Woman again in our next episode. We may as well tell you that now.
Yeah.
We're jumping a few years forward. But you can find out next time which issue we'll be doing.
Yes. So that's what we thought about this issue. So what did you think about it? Please get in touch. You can email us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook because we'll be posting up some select images from this issue on there, as well as some other bonus material. Also check us out on Instagram. We're at the Earth2 Podcast there as well. And on Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2. Also, I'd like to say a nice thanks to Gordon Johnson, who referred to our Solomon Grundy episode on his comic blog recently, which was very good. He did a recent review of Solomon Grundy. His blog is called This Week Gordon Has Mostly Been Reading, and you can find it at all the initials of that, twghmbr.wordpress.com. So yeah, check that out there because he does lots of comic reviews and good, honest opinions and celebrations of some great stories.
And we should also mention Gordon's the principal artist on Peter's very own Langwalk Hame, which if you haven't checked out, you really should. And I'm saying this genuinely, honestly, not because he's my pal and he's my podcast buddy, but it's brilliant. How can we get hold of a copy of Langwalk Hame, Peter? He's blushing, you know.
Send us an email and that's fine. It's a collaborative effort with myself and a lot of talented Scottish artists in a small press comic, which is basically the story of a drunk man coming home from the pub one night who finds himself desperately in need of the toilet.
And it gets caught short.
Yes. And it's told in a mix between the reality of his journey home, which is amazingly illustrated by Gordon, and all the fantasy experiences en route, which is done by the cream of Scottish independent comic scene talent. So, yeah, if that sounds like something you're interested in, please get in touch. If that's something you're not interested in, I'm not offended in any way whatsoever.
And I'm obviously completely unbiased, but it's brilliant, and if you haven't checked it out, you should. So we're allowed a free plug. It's our podcast. So anyway,
on that bombshell, I've been Peter.
And I've been David.
And we'll talk to you next time for more Wonder Woman action on
the Earth2 Podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime. Wonder Woman, beautiful as Aphrodite, wise as Athena.
Rumblier than my tummy.